So 6 months ago, I told my friends I'm moving to Rwanda, and their reactions were interesting. Most people's top two questions were, number one, is that safe? Number two, where is Rwanda anyways? Now, most people knowledge of Rwanda ends at Hotel Rwanda, which is the movie about the genocide which happened 30 years ago. What I've discovered in this country has completely changed the way I think about entrepreneurship, about remote work, and about Africa in general. So I've traveled to over 60 countries across the last 10 years and built my local cleaning business to $150,000 per month in monthly recurring revenue. I worked everywhere from Bali to Thailand to Mexico City to rural Mongolia. But Rwanda might be my favorite place ever, and by far is the most underrated country I have ever been to. Today, I'm going to go over everything you need to know about working remotely in Rwanda, including cost of living and my final thoughts after being here for over 6 months. The reason I came this time for 6 months was because my wife is working and helping out over here. She's a physician and wanted to do global health, and we thought this was a fantastic spot for that. I came here in 2022 originally. And honestly, my wife and I freaking loved it. It was completely unexpected. I did a motorcycle trip, and this was the best spot for it. And I didn't know what to expect when coming here. And we both fell in love with the country, and that's why she decided to do Global Health Initiative here. I think Rwanda shatters a lot of the old stereotypes of what the Western world thinks about Africa, which is, incorrect and completely different from what most people think it is. Right? Rwanda, for example, is the safest country in Africa. It's the cleanest country in Africa as well. It's like Singapore level clean. They actually modeled a lot of the rebuild post-genocide after the government of Singapore and came up with incredible infrastructure for that. What I love is actually every month on the last Saturday of the month, they have something called Umuganda. Umuganda is like a community service day where everyone goes out and from like the morning until noon just helps out. They clean up, they do community projects, and it's required by law. So everyone does it, and that's why the place is so clean. And how freaking cool would it be if every single country modeled themselves after Rwanda and had an Umuganda and just did community work and helped out different people? It'd be incredible. And Rwanda right now is starting to become a lot of like the tech haven, right? I think Kenya is still one of the biggest tech havens in Rwanda, in Africa, but Rwanda is starting to get a lot of external investors. It's a very stable government. It's growing rapidly. Things are changing so incredibly fast. It's just really cool to see what's actually happening here in Rwanda. I feel like it's the launching pad of a lot of the cool innovation which is happening in Africa. So Rwanda's population is around 13 million or so. In Kigali, the capital, I think there's like 3 million people who come in and out every day to work, but I think it's about like 1 million or 1.5 million who actually live here. And then when you get to city center, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm in, a kind of the expat community. It's called Kimihurura, right? It's very nice neighborhood. It's beautiful. So you oftentimes see the same people over and over and over. Now, you might think, okay, what's so new about that? Like, I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm from a bigger city, and I've never really had like a small city community feel, right? And I think there's different small towns in the US where I'm sure it's like this, but for me, this is the first time where I'm like, oh, I know my local like grocery store guy. I see the same people out every single day or multiple times. If I go to an event on the weekend, I'm seeing the same people I saw the day before. And, you kind of get to feel their faces, say what's up to them. And I found like small city living, which is kind of what I describe this as, is beautiful. Like, I actually love it, right? Like, the difference is if I'm in, like, say, Los Angeles, I might see people here and there, but some people are kind of caught up in their own lives. People are doing their own things. It takes 2 months to arrange a hangout with their friends, right? Over here, everything's smaller. It's quicker. People are down to do things, and you see the same people over and over and over. And I just realized how much I value that community aspect and how it happens so organically in a lot of places, especially like smaller cities like this. And, an example would be in Los Angeles, just a reference, there's 100 things that are happening on any given night, 100 music events, 100 different things. In Kigali, there's multiple things happening, but really, like, I've noticed there's like 1 or 2 main things that people go to every weekend. That's kind of it. Like, it narrows down the choices where it's like, hey, everyone's going to this thing on this night, or everyone's going to this thing on this night. And the lack of options, oddly, has been very, very nice, right? If you've heard of like the Netflix effect, which is where if you have too many options, you're never too happy with the option you actually select, because you're like, what happens if I picked X, Y, and Z? But when there's less options, human psychology is kind of weird, right? It likes that. It says, I have more value on this. That's why, like, the Netflix effect, I used to watch Gladiator on TNT every freaking Friday because it was the only thing on when there was cable television. And when Netflix comes, I kind of don't like the first 5 minutes of a show, I flip it. It's like that. That's the best way I can describe it when it comes to Kigali and small city living is there's less stuff, less options. And because you see the same people everywhere, you kind of hang out together. You do more things. You value it a little bit more. And I found that incredible. I've never lived in a small city. And I'd still consider this like, a bigger town. And I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm not seeing as part of Kigali. But I've really enjoyed just the fewer options, the more community feel. Being able to meet different people and go out with them and actually build a routine and build connections has been something very novel, which I didn't even know I was craving. So another thing which has been interesting over here, so where I'm living at a building in Kimihurura, which is in one part of Kigali. And this is kind of where it is. There's a lot of stuff going on. Pretty much like right over there, there's a gym I started going to called Soho, because it's literally right over there. And it's a boxing gym. And kind of going back to how important community is, I was never a huge guy to go work out. But when I went there and I started meeting people, some people are expats, some people are locals, and you realize you see the same people over and over and over, you build connections. Everyone's kind of like excited to do stuff. There's kind of that carpe diem mentality of the people here. Like people just want to hang out and do stuff. And it started building more of a community connection. And I value that so much. So I started going to the gym more and more and more. And I now go there pretty much every day. I'm probably the healthiest I've ever been in terms of fitness ever, only because of the community, right? It has nothing to do with like me being motivational or me finally signing up for stuff. It's just like, hey, I kind of want to go there because people are there who I know who are part of the community and I can hang out with them. So I end up going every single day. That's probably been like the biggest life-changing part of the year for me, truly. Is like, I'm living here and I'm doing all this stuff, but like I just spent 6 months getting extremely healthy just because I found an incredible community with this gym over here and met people. And these people are wanting to hang out. They want to do stuff. And I just realized how important that is, right? Not just with fitness, but with anything, is finding a community, finding a group that can hold you accountable, finding things that you look forward to every day, whether it's fitness, whether it's business, like it doesn't really matter. That is so key to building habits. You could try to like brute force it with will. Be like, all right, I'm just going to go work out every day. Or I'm going to start this business. I'm going to sign up for this course and then follow the steps by myself. But if you're with other people, if you're with a community, if you actually like them, you could go so much further, right? And like, yeah, of course you're paying for it. But the fact is, it works. It's worked for me. It's helped me get the most fit I've ever been. And it works in business. It works in franchise. It works in everything. And that's been a very cool realization to see how it played in real life for me. So I'm walking over to a co-working space right now. And I just think the business infrastructure in Rwanda, especially for remote work, is freaking next level. Like it's nothing what I expected. Wi-Fi speeds are incredible over here. Actually, just last month, I went to an Africa business convention, which was over here at the convention center. There's something called like the Rwanda Development Board, which is a very planned action for how to develop the country, how to grow the country. And because of that, you see an insane amount of growth happening in Rwanda right now. And honestly, for remote work, I think it's going to be the next Bali. It's going to be the next Chiang Mai, because it's so freaking easy to work remotely here. There's coffee shops popping up. By the way, coffee shop culture was never a thing from what I understand, like 5 years ago. They're starting to pop up and people are working remotely. Currently, a lot of the people here are probably people who work for like NGOs and things like that. I do see that changing a lot. A lot of people are coming here as the place they're moving to in Africa. And it's just like an incredible area for business development in Africa. They have the convention center over here and a lot of business activities happen there. And it's obviously extremely modern, not what I originally expected when coming to Rwanda, just because I didn't know enough about it. But honestly, there's just a lot of incredible business opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities happening here. And I do think this is the spot for remote workers going forward. So speaking of remote work, I run in US hours. So Rwanda is like 6 to 9 hours ahead of time. Honestly, I love it because in the mornings, like right now, I could have a slow morning. I could go to the gym. I could do boxing. I could have time to myself on the balcony. And then I get to work day and no one's bugging me. There's no meetings. There's no calls yet. And then I usually have a break around afternoon time. And then I could actually do my meetings later in the day when the US hours open up. Most of my day consists of like
working on my business, which has made this franchise supporting franchisees, and I could get a lot of the support system and back end stuff, working on the business stuff done during the day, and just meetings at nighttime. So far it's worked out nicely. I mean, sometimes I got to work till like 9 or 10 o'clock, but most of the time it's been very convenient in terms of time zones. I do like being ahead just because I'm a night owl anyways. I get up late, I stay up late. So it's worked out well for me. Now let's talk about prices and cost of living, because I'm sure you guys are curious on how much it actually costs to live here.
Let's talk coffee prices, right? I think depending if you go to a local place or not, the coffee prices vary a lot. For example, I'm at a local spot right now called Samba, and this coffee, which is Americano, was about 1,500 franc, which comes out to about $1 roughly. It's like 1,400 to 1 is the conversion rate right now. The coffee in Rwanda is fantastic. Like, these are the same beans typically that they use in Ethiopia, which is famous for coffee. It's becoming a huge culture here. Now, this was about 1,500, this was about 1,000, right? So you're thinking like $1.50, $2 all in for coffee at a local spot. I've noticed it varies a lot though. Like if you go to Kiva Noir, which is a really swanky new coffee shop, or in Dabo, which is another newer one, prices go up a lot. So normally that'll be like in the 3,000 to 5,000 range for coffee. And then it's going to be a little bit more with food too, and like other things you get. Like I always get banana bread there because I freaking love it, which is like 4,000, right? So you notice it's not too much of a difference from European prices or US prices for some of these things. There is a massive range though, right? A lot of those swanky places are newer, they're popping up, they're catered to oftentimes as a tourist or people coming in. And they're just more expensive, right? But you don't have to go there. There's a lot of like incredible local spots which have fantastic coffee, and that's oftentimes where I go as well. So I would say the range in terms of coffee and stuff, it varies quite a bit, but think about like $1 to $3 is pretty average. Let's talk a little bit more about rent prices in Rwanda, specifically Kigali. Everything has a very large range. I've noticed it changed quite a bit from 3 years ago when I was here to even now. So I live in Kimihurura in a building called Meraki. This is a brand new build. I'm on the 5th floor. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. Has security, has a gym, has a pool. I get a chef who comes, a couple times a month. All in cost for me for that is about $2,000 to $2,100. Now I'll be honest, that's very high. Like that's a pretty high not to be paying. That I decided just to splurge, to be honest. Like this is one of the nicest apartments I've ever lived in. And that like $2,000 to $2,500 for an apartment in Kigali is probably the high end of the range that you will be paying. Most places, probably really good places, are going to be between $1,000 to $1,500 if you're going to be in a nice, newer, kind of modern apartment. A lot of other local spots are probably in, the $400 to $500 range. So you notice like it varies quite a bit depending on where you're living and how nice and how new of a place you want. One thing I've noticed, I have a buddy here who does a lot of real estate development, and it is freaking insane how much development's happening. Like literally behind me over here, they're building an entire mall, an entire office space, and all around the city is just massive levels of construction. And a lot of this goes to real estate as well. So what's happening here, at least right now in 2025, people buy plots of land and then build, multifamily housing. And that's my buddy, he's a developer. I said, hey, how much does it kind of cost to do that? A lot of people here don't want to sell their land because land's valuable. The country's the size of Maryland, right? So like people want to hold on to the land, but let's say you acquire land in a prime area and you want to build on top of it. It'd probably be around, what I understand, $300,000 to build either like a large house, or it would be, or like a multifamily house of like a quad, right? Then people sell that off and things like that. So there's a lot of new places popping up rapidly, which are very modern, which are very new, which have all the amenities you want. And this is happening all over Kigali. So I feel like next year when I come, it's gonna be completely different, right? And the high-end places will be something completely different. It just changes so fast. But at least compared to like where I live in Los Angeles, compared to a lot of places in the world, way more affordable. It just depends on the level of luxury you want. The cool part is Kigali is starting to have every range of luxury that you could want. So I'm walking to my co-working space now. Cost of co-working space vary quite a bit. It's around $100. It's like 100K francs or 125K francs, something like that. So cost isn't like incredibly cheap, but co-working space is just super nice. There's one called Norskin, which I go to often, which is better than any co-working space I've ever been to in the world.
There's one called Westerwell, which I'm heading to right now, which is closer to me. High-speed Wi-Fi, podcast booths, all the kind of good stuff. So still a fantastic places to work.
Next up, why don't we talk about restaurant prices? And I've noticed this varies a lot just because of how fast Rwanda has developed, where there's so many new fancy spots popping up. And then there's a lot of the local spots. Like everything I've noticed here in Kigali, the range is massive. So for example, I ordered a ham and cheese sandwich with a little side salad over here at this local spot. Cost around 3,500 franc, which is about like $2 to $3 US. That's about how much it is for a full meal, which is awesome. But if you go to, let's say, a fancier spot, slightly fancier spot in like a prime neighborhood like Kimihurura, most of those dishes are going to be between 7,000 to 9,000, roughly Rwandan franc, which is like $5 to $6. So still very affordable. What I've noticed happening here is, let's say for dinner, there's a lot of fancy spots which are popping up like Soy or Kozo, and these are different places in the area I'm in, which is Kimihurura. And for these places, I've noticed dishes starting to go between like 18,000 to 20,000 Rwandan franc, which comes out to like 14, 15 US dollars. So these are like really nice places, fancy places, obviously way cheaper than LA, but still like not incredibly cheap. And a lot of these places are popping up just because Rwanda has developed so freaking fast. So many people are moving here, and a lot of people want these types of places. Some places are local spots, $2, $3. Some places, most places I go to on average would be like $7 to $9 for a meal. And then the higher end places will be, let's say, $15 to $20 for a meal is typically where you're looking at for food costs.
Grocery store prices vary quite a bit. So I just went to one called Simba, which is a chain that they have all around. And the cool part is you could find pretty much anything you want, but the prices are going to vary a lot depending if it's imported or not. So for example, if you get like milk, it's like $1. Pasta, like a bag of pasta is like $1. If you get eggs, you get like a dozen for about $1. So very cheap. Things like potatoes, rice, beans would be very cheap over here, so that's fantastic. Things which are imported are very expensive. You can still get it, but it's expensive. For example, like oat milk or soy milk will be something like $6 or $7 US for a liter, which is a lot. If you want to get like a jar of imported peanut butter or Nutella, it's going to be like $8 US. Again, a lot of money. It's very expensive. So you can find anything you want, but the prices are going to vary drastically, whether it's imported or grown over here, right? Import costs are a lot. It takes a lot of money to import stuff here. And that's why a lot of the heavy stuff costs a lot more. So again, the beauty is you can find anything you want, but the prices might not make sense.
My other main cost would be, let's say, transportation. So usually I use Move, which is like an Uber-esque app, or Yego. Usually that's going to be like $3,000 to $5,000 or 3 to 5,000 Rwandan franc, which is about $2 to $3 US, mostly to go anywhere you want. If it's going to be a little bit further out, it might be up to $7, but that's generally the range. It's going to be $3 to $5 for transport on an Uber. That's generally it. If you get on a moto, typically it's like 500 to 1,000 Rwandan franc wherever you go. I probably pay them a Zungu tax, which is like, they'll charge me more. Typically, anywhere I go, I just give them 1,000, and it's usually a little bit of overpay anyways. So that's about the range for transport. So for the gym I go to a gym called Soho, which has been awesome. It's a fantastic community. Check it out. It's in Kimihurura. That comes out to about 100K Rwandan franc, which is about like $80 US, $77, something like that. And that's for a monthly membership at the gym. Prices vary, all that kind of good stuff. And that's more like a HIIT type training. That's not just regular gym. There are regular gyms like Waka. I'm not really sure on the prices, but you'll probably be expecting to pay between like $30 to $50 for regular gym. And maybe if you're going to go to like a HIIT CrossFit type training, you're probably in the 100K Rwandan franc, $70, $80 US type of range for the gym. Other costs like entertainment. For example, we went to a Rwandan basketball league game, like BAL. It was like a large tournament in Africa, and there's the Rwandan league. You get tickets for, let's say, 3,000 Rwandan franc, probably like 5,000 on average, which is about $3 for a basketball game. My wife and I decided to splurge, so we got like courtside tickets where, dude, we'd never be able to afford that in LA for Lakers. That'd be like $10,000. And that was about like 50,000 Rwandan franc, which is about like $35 for courtside seats. And dude, these games are epic. Like the stadium, BK Arena, is fantastic. The teams are playing at a high level. The crowd is so into it. So that'd be an example of like how much you might pay for a sporting event. We went to a movie theater over here called Canal, which is in Ribeiro. And that's, we saw like one of the new Marvel movies which came out, and that came out to 3,000 francs for a ticket, which is about $2 for a ticket for that. So I'd say like the entertainment is relatively cheap in comparison, depending what you're doing. Like sometimes I've been to like bars and stuff, and there's a cover charge, and that'd be around 10,000 Rwandan franc, which is about $7. Again, I'm paying the Mzungu tax, right? Because I'm a foreigner, so prices would vary depending on who you are, where you're going, things like that. But that's pretty much it for entertainment. We probably spend $200 a month, I'd say, combined on entertainment.
Something I found fascinating here is that the money system revolves around something called Momo Pay, which is mobile payments. The way it works is you load money onto your phone number, your Rwandan phone number, and you could send payments to any person or any business all electronically through your phone. The reason this exists is because 23% of Rwandans have smartphones, so they can't use things like app-based systems. So they had to invent a way of actually sending money through the telecom providers, which is what's Momo. Over here, not too many people have credit cards. There's no credit system which exists, so banks can't do that. The way it works right now is, for example, for me as a foreigner, I'd pull out cash from the ATM. And by the way, I use the Charles Schwab card, which reimburses me for foreign transaction fees, so it's pretty sweet. So I pull out cash from the ATM, and I have to go to these stands called like the Momo stands. I give them the money, and I say, hey, load 50K or 100K franc onto my Momo account, and then they would load the money onto my Momo account, and that's it. It's kind of tedious, but like if you actually have a bank here or, a Rwandan bank, would be a lot easier. Could you just link everything together? I can't, so I have to physically go there and take money out of the ATM and put it there. It is very convenient though, right? Like everyone, moto drivers, food stall people, they use mobile payment now. Everything is online. Everyone has it. So pretty unique system. Don't know how long it's going to last because it's based off of telecom, but eventually maybe whenever we get smartphones, it'll go a different way.
One of the biggest costs, which has been the most worth it though, is the travel and adventure you could do within Rwanda. I've gone through all four corners of Rwanda. I started in Kigali, I went up to the north to Musanze and over to the Volcanoes National Park. With my wife, we went gorilla trekking. I went over to the west and went to Lake Kivu. When my mom came, we took her to the lakeside and went over there. I went down to the south to Nyungwe, did a marathon over there, and that's like a rainforest landscape. All the way in the east is Akagera National Park, which is safari landscape. And the crazy part is like, Rwanda is the size of Maryland, and you have all these different landscapes within there. Everything's within 3 hours. So Rwanda is incredible for so many reasons. It has so much going on with it. I do want to talk about some of the cons of living here, some things which have kind of bugged me a bit, which I think it's good to know. So number one would probably be access to goods. In the US, I'm just so used to Amazon, quick delivery, get anything you want. In Rwanda, it's not quite like that. You have access to some goods and a lot of things are starting to become imported, but it could be hard to find the things you want, especially when it comes to food, when it comes to groceries, when it comes to like protein powder, like things like that are really hard to get a hold of. If you're a big shopper, it's not a big shopping destination. I would say like my wife has found a tailor and she's able to make custom clothing for her, which is freaking awesome. She absolutely loves it. But access to goods is somewhat limited and that can be tiring. So if you do come and you stay for a while, bring a big bag of stuff that you want. We brought a big suitcase filled with all the goods we want: granola, Nutella, protein powder, all that kind of good stuff, because it might be hard to find when you're here. The other part about Rwanda is it's a small country. It's about the size of Maryland. It's growing rapidly, but it's still relatively new in its rebuild. Because of that, a lot of like nightlife and things like that just don't exist here. I've heard some people call Rwanda like boring. I don't find it boring at all. But if you're a big nightlife type of person, you want to go out, you want energy constantly, big city energy, Rwanda isn't the perfect place for that. There are places to go out, like right over here where I am, there's a lounge called Boho, which is awesome and swanky and nice. So these things are popping up, but it wouldn't be a big city like Nairobi or Cape Town, where there's a lot happening at any given hour. Now for me, that's awesome. I love slowing down. I love the fact that there's coffee shop culture. There's enough things to do for me. But for many people who want that big city vibe, Kigali isn't exactly that. And in Rwanda, Kigali is the main place to go. I don't know many expats who live in other places. I've met a few who live in Musanze, which is in the north, which is another city. But for the most part, Kigali is kind of it when it comes to city living. In different societies, this is something I learned. This is more of a cultural thing. There's something called a high context society and a low context society. A high context society is one where something like Japan, where it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, it's the tone you say it, it's the inflection you say it, things like that. Now, low context societies, on the other hand, are things like the United States or Germany, where things are very direct, they're very literal. Now, I grew up in a low context society, which is the US, where, when you say things, it's very direct. What you say is what you mean. That's kind of how it goes. It's very direct, very transparent when it comes to the words you use. In Rwanda, it's closer to a high context society. So sometimes what's frustrating when I'm not used to it, this is more of a cultural thing, will be trying to understand the different cues. People say, hey, I'll be there, or like, hey, I'll try. And that means something very different. So trying to just understand that cultural barriers sometimes can get frustrating. Again, I think it's more of a cultural thing because it's a high context society, but that's something which has been definitely an adjustment for me. The other part, which candidly I think is the biggest con or downside, and by the way, I hate complaining about this, but it would be probably around the service level. Like candidly, sometimes you might be waiting like an hour to get your food at a restaurant. Things just don't move as fast. I think the pace of life is slower, and that goes to many different areas of life. Sometimes it could be irksome, it kind of bugs you, especially like if you're coming from a society where customer service is key, things are speedy and fast. It's not exactly like that here. That was probably the biggest adjustment for me, is just understanding the pace, understanding that things are not always timely. That's just how it goes, right? That's a cultural difference, but something which will take some getting used to for sure. Africa is a huge continent, it has 54 different countries. If you actually look at the map of the world, it's completely not accurate. Africa is like way bigger. You can fit Russia and the US and all these different countries in the continent of Africa. Now, this isn't exactly a downside, but something to consider is it takes very long to get anywhere from Kigali if you wanted to travel around Africa. I had friends who wanted to come visit and said, hey, I'm going to do Nairobi and South Africa and do all those things in 2 weeks. Like, dude, it just doesn't work that way. It's way too big. One downside is in Kigali, if you're going to travel anywhere in Africa, you're typically connecting through Nairobi, through Addis, maybe through Johannesburg. So most places you go to is going to be like 10 hours to get to most countries in Africa, minimum from Kigali. So, it's a great base. If you want to stay posted here, you have the nomad life, having a fantastic quality of life. If you want to travel around a lot, it might be a little bit more difficult because it's not as convenient as some of the major hubs around Africa. And this is something which is true for anywhere in the world, but you will probably be paying Mzungu prices for everything. That's like the foreigner prices, the gringo prices. If you go to the market and they see that you're a foreigner, prices jump up, right? That's kind of how it goes. Now, I don't think it's like offensive. Like also the great part is no one's really hassling you. I've been to countries where people come up to you and hassle you and follow you around. It's not like that. Everyone's super respectful, super kind, super peaceful here, but just understand you're going to be paying a premium on most things. That's just how it goes over here. So not exactly a con. That's kind of how it is in most places in the world, but something to be aware of. Look, Rwanda is not for everyone. And I think that's kind of the point. It's not flashy. It's not fast. There's not endless nightlife and constant shopping, but it's calm. It's real. It's clear. If you want to get a peek into a country that's rebuilding into something remarkable, if you want to get a launching pad into discovering the beauty of Africa, if you want your money to go further and live a high quality life, I think Rwanda might surprise you. So I came here 6 months ago as an experiment, and now I'm planning to come back here again and again, not because Rwanda is perfect, but because it's exciting and authentic. If you're craving a reset in life, not just in pace but perspective, Rwanda absolutely delivers.